Hey everyone, I want to go over my NBA basketball spreadsheet tool and how to use it. So here's the main screen. We're on the main tab. First thing you would do is enter your login and password here. And if it's the first time you're using it, you're going to press refresh logins. If you've used it before, you don't have to press refresh logins after the first time. You just make sure it's in here. And then we'll start things off by you press refresh today's data. So I'm going to press that button, and it's going to do. It's going to go out and pull in today's information, the games, the salaries, all the other stats, and it'll take 5-10 seconds. Okay, so we're done. Then it takes us to the stats page. But before we look at that, let's go back to the main tab. So what we did, we pressed refresh. That pulls in today's data, and what it's going to do, if you see, it's today's date is November 30th. It's pulling all today's games. It's got the line for both teams. It's got the over-under. Here's where you can decide to include players. What this means is if you want to include them in your lineups. You might be playing just the late slate, the 10 o'clock games. Then you would change this to a no, and you can copy this all the way down. So say it would only transfer over these two games. But just for this example, let's have yes for all of them. Actually, I've got these buttons here that you can change to, if you want to make these all no, to do it quickly, then make them all yes, just to save you a little step. And you press transfer of players, and what it's going to do, it's going to transfer all the players from these teams onto your lineups tab. So, sorry I'm kind of bouncing around here, but let's just go back to the main tab again. This is where everything happens. We press refresh. That's always the first thing you do to get today's data. I kind of have this spelled out here on the right on like how to use. It kind of tells these same steps. So after we press transfer, we got all the players on the multi lineups, but I've got other tabs first before we go into running lineups. Here's the stats tab. What this does, this pulls in all the latest stats. So it's got the players here. We'll scroll down the team. We got the FanDuel and DraftKings salaries. We got different projections. We got my projections. We got your own projections, which I'll show you how you can create them. We got the over/under. We got injury status. Here's the line, and then we get some more advanced stats: days rest. Here's how many games they played, their average FanDuel. I just have it set up for FanDuel points, but I mean it works for either because the scoring is pretty similar. Here's the average FanDuel points home and away. If this player is playing at home, it'll show that their home average points are. Here's the last year's. Here's versus the opponent, if they played the opponent before. Just to kind of see if you can find the trend there. This is for this year. Here's last year's. How many fantasy points did they score in the last 3 and 6 games. Here's what their maximum was in the last 3 games, maximum in the last 6, and the same for the minimum. And then we get into minutes. How many average minutes did they play? Minutes in the last 3 and 6. And then here's some defensive stats. The defense, like how many fantasy points are given up versus that position by their opponent. And here's a couple like in the last 5 and the last 10. And then here's just a few more stats to end it up. The percentage of minutes increased. That's good to see if like a player all of a sudden is playing more minutes because of an injury to someone else. 1 is just the average, means they're playing the same. If it's under 1, it means they're playing less minutes. If it's over 1, like here, Harden's playing a few more minutes than normal. And then here's just a few more advanced stats that I have set up. Next, there's a leaders page I got set up, which will show like the top, I think I got the top 50 on here. Players, fantasy points scored the last 3 games, last 6 games, so you can kind of see it in a little more condensed style. Here's the average minutes per game, average points per minute, average increase in minutes in the last 3 games. So you can see like Daryl Arthur all of a sudden 1.6. That means he's playing 60% more minutes than than his average is. We looked at the stats. Here's the projection. You can build your own projections. What this does is it kind of starts off with the average FanDuel points, and then it adds or subtracts different percentages based on what you set up here. Like here's the line. If the line is between -10 and -25, if they happen to be high favorite, I have it set up where it'll take whatever their average points are. Say it's 20 points. It'll add 1 point, multiply it by 1.3. So that'll make it like 30% extra, which is about 6 points more. Days rest. Do you want to increase or decrease their points by days rest? If they're home or away, do they play better or worse? Fantasy points given up by opponent. And so I've got like 6 or 7 different categories here where you can set your criteria. Then when you're done, you press to update the stats page, and then we'll go back to the stats page, and you can see the oops, I missed it. Where the projections here. It'd be under your projections. So these are what the score is based on your projections. If you changed up the numbers a little bit, it'll change these up. Next is we're going to get into the optimal lineups. Here's where you get the actual players. These are all their salaries, and here's our projections. Now you get to pick different criteria. How many lineups do you want to pick? You can pick up to 200. What's the variance? What that just means is when, say you pick 3 lineups, the first lineup scores 300. The scoring variance for the next lineup is 0.2 less than that. So it's 299.8 or less. If you want to stack a team, you can pick a team that you want to stack, and the number of players that you want on it. FanDuel, the maximum is 4 players. DraftKings, you could have more. And then here you pick which projection you want to use. Ours or yours, or they get number for you on here. Then you press this, picks a lineup, and it'll run a lineup. It takes 5 to 10 seconds per lineup, roughly. You can do a FanDuel or DraftKings. I'm not going to run through it now, just to save time. But when you're done, it's going to take you to this. And here's the lineups. It's going to show all the positions, and here's your players. There's the salary, and there's the projections. See, this is a DraftKings lineup I have set up here. And what I've got a few buttons on here. You could export this to a CSV file. So I know in DraftKings you can import CSV files and get all the lineups faster. And you can also check the injury status. See, if you press this, nobody there is injured. But if there was an injury, even just like a day-to-day or questionable type thing, it'll show up there. So that's our most common lineup optimizer. I've got 2 others which I'll run through. This multi-lineup 2 is where you just rank the players. It doesn't go on projections. You just rank the players from 1 to 5 on the players that you want to show up in your lineup. Say you want to fade Westbrook today. You don't want him in any lineup, so you don't put anything. You want Curry in, you put a 4. It's between 1 and 5. The higher the number, up to 5 means, like a 5 will probably show up in about 75 to 80% of your lineups. A 2 will show up in maybe 30%. A 1 will show up in maybe 10% of the lineups. And so you can go through, pick the players like, I sort of like Whiteside, but not too much, but I want him in a few lineups. Like going on here, I'm really high on Isaiah Thomas today, so I'm going to put a 5 based on I think he's going to have a good game. And then here it's going to count your selections. You want to make sure you have enough selections for Solver 2 to pick when you're for doing the lineups. Here you can pick the number of lineups you want, but then you can just run FanDuel or DraftKings lineups. And the last tool is the multi-lineup 3. It works very similar to the 1, except it goes a lot faster. So here you can stack a team. You can also include or exclude a player. This works the same on the multi-lineup 1 tab. I forgot to mention that. If you really like a player, like you want Blake Griffin in there, you can include him, you can exclude him, and then he'll be in every one of your lineups. The same works for 3. For this multi-lineup 3, but the difference between this one, multi-lineup 3, is it runs like 1,000 lineups in under 3 minutes. So you can get a bunch of lineups running. You can export them to CSV and get it real fast. So it depends what you're looking for. If you only want to run 5 lineups, you want to use multi-lineup 1. You can get that done in 30 seconds. If you want to run a ton of lineups, this lineup 3 is what you would need. If you want to stack a team, you can do that. You can pick what projections you want to use again, and then you click the button. It'll run it, and it'll come out to something like this. It'll show all the players. It's going to show the salary and their projected score. And then you can export that to a CSV file. So that is everything on the tool. If you have any questions, I mean, it takes a little time to get used to it, but I tried to make it as user-friendly as I could, and I'm always around for questions. Thanks a lot. Bye.